I see two major threats to the American way of life, the American dream, society, us turning into a third world country, and whatever, having another civil war, bad things for the US coming. The two major threats, regardless if you're Republican or Democrat, the two major threats that have been happening, and we can tie this back to people in power wanting chaos so they can get away with doing whatever they want. Two things. One, we have the money, tax dollars flowing to NGOs and nonprofits, going back to politicians, as far as we've seen, mostly Democrats, I'm sure Republicans as well. But that is horrible. That is corrupt. That is a huge problem. Secondly, what this video is about is the erosion of enforcing crime. We have many, many cities, especially sanctuary cities, where doesn't matter what crime you commit, you're instantly released. Or like in San Francisco, you commit a crime and you expose yourself in public, or worse, and you don't even get arrested. You can do drugs in public, et cetera, et cetera. So for whatever reason, we have this massive move towards not enforcing crime. I've heard from many people, and this is something that's not reported on. We're hearing about the judicial issues with small judges basically making national and federal decisions for everyone. Like, how was California able to make this decision about real estate for the whole country? Anyway, we have this issue with judges not doing their jobs, basically the collapse of our criminal system. And so this right here is a perfect example of politics getting involved, where people are dying, getting robbed, losing their way of life over politics, over this extreme issue of illegal aliens being kept in the US, getting more benefits than veterans, getting more benefits than anyone else at taxpayer dime, and they can do no wrong, and they're instantly released even when they are violent with everyone around them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, are you familiar with the Department of Homeland Security Immigration Detainer Notice of Action form? You familiar with these forms?
I've heard of them, yes.
Yeah, okay. And these forms, about halfway down the page, it says, it is therefore requested that you, this is going to local law enforcement, requested that you notify DHS as early as practicable, at least 48 hours if possible, before the alien in your custody is released. All right? Is that partisan, or is that just common sense?
It depends on who you ask, but it is.
So this idea, I don't know when this happened in the last 10 years. My understanding is 100% on the Democrats. This idea that illegal aliens are not to be deported, no matter how bad they are, no matter who they've killed, raped, or stolen from, is just totally and utterly insane. And basically, now there's this, and you'll hear about it more here. It's to the point where the system is set up where the local law enforcement are discouraged or could be get in trouble for doing that. So it's so messed up now. It's such this ball of whatever you want to call it, just tangled up mess that needs to be fixed.
Well, the ranking member said we need to function in a bipartisan way. I don't think that's partisan. That's just saying, hey, you got a bad guy, at least someone who's been charged with crime in your possession. He's also an illegal migrant. Can you give us a 48 hours heads up before you release him to the streets?
And the idea of the left and the left media not being able to call anyone a bad guy, this constant argument about this criminal who was accidentally shipped to a foreign country. Is that bad? Yes, but he wasn't a U.S. citizen, and he was a horrible person. He was a criminal. He was a gangster. Um, and the left reports it like he is some sort of innocent U.S. citizen, and it dominates the news for weeks. It's crazy. The left cannot admit who's good and who's bad anymore.
Sure.
That makes sense to me, right? I don't think that's partisan. I think that's just common sense. Mr. Hallman, are you familiar how this form works? This detainer process is supposed to work? All right, the next line says, maintain custody of the alien for a period not to exceed 48 hours beyond the time. Again, we're requesting you do that. They're not demanding. We're just requesting you help us out. Law enforcement, working with other law enforcement to protect the safety of law enforcement and, of course, the public at large, beyond the time when he or she would otherwise have been released from your custody to allow DHS to...
It's another point another thing that needs to be pushed in the narrative, needs to be advertised in political ads. Safety for police is safety for the public. You know, this whole everybody's got to be against the police, and you know, obviously the police need to have their rules and need to be fair, but you know, you can't have this whole like police are bad, defund the police. It's just totally insane.
Assume custody. Again, that seems like common sense to me. But sanctuary policies prevent these two requests from taking place. Is that right? If you're a sanctuary state, sanctuary city, you don't comply with these. You may give them like we're going to give you a 10-minute notice. We're going to release them and then tell you we already released them. That's how it works in these sanctuary cities, in these sanctuary states. Is that right, Mr. Hammond?
That's correct, too. It's even interesting, too, under the Biden administration, you have a lot of state and local law enforcement who think that they're not going to comply with ICE based on their experiences under the Biden administration. ICE had policies in place that made it so hard for enforcement and removal officers to actually work with these jails.
Yeah.
They made it next to impossible. So you have all of these jails that think, oh, I don't know if I'm going to comply. I may get penalized if a state puts an aggressive restriction on that. But everything is going to be streamlined. If they want to comply, it will be a good process.
Yeah, let's put up on the screen. Are you familiar with the name Abraham Gonzalez, Mr. Hammond? Do you know this guy? Abraham Gonzalez?
I do not.
Okay, this guy was released this year, February 28, 25. He was released. Look at what the sheriff's department put here. This is a ICE notification. They put the stamp on there, being released to the streets. Now, this guy had been in custody for 345 days. And ICE had sent this very form asking, hey, can you give us a 48-hour heads up before this guy who was charged with aggravated assault, charged with stealing an automobile, charged with menacing, can you just give us a heads up? And guess what Denver, Sanctuary City, Denver did?
And in Denver, this guy had to probably be so bad to even get to that point where they would actually arrest him and charge him with stuff, with you know, with robbing a car and whatever. In the Twin Cities, they've got a DA who says no one under the age of 18 is going to be prosecuted for stealing a car, and so you can guess that all of the people who live in those zip codes where cars are stolen all the time, they're paying more for their car insurance than they are for the car payments. You're punishing the average Joe who's trying to do their job to help out these losers who are just destroying society. It has to be brought up. I mean, it's just like this is like an obscure video from Forbes, and this stuff is hardly talked about.
They called him 1 hour before, and ICE couldn't get there, and they released this guy to the streets as they stamped on the form. Now, what I find interesting, can we put that back up again? What I find interesting is under the section flag, see it over there on the right-hand side? It says he's cleared, but then look what it says, violent to staff. So the very people who released him to the streets knew this guy. He'd been charged again with aggravated assault, stealing a car, but he'd also been violent to the very people in the jail who were holding him, and they still wouldn't give notice to ICE. And then, as I said in my opening statement, this guy is released to the streets. ICE goes out to arrest him. Officer gets hurt. They had to tase the guy, so the migrant gets hurt. Tell me how that is not, tell me why that we should have that kind of policy happen, Mr. Hammond.
Well, we shouldn't. It doesn't keep our communities safer in any sense. And again, what they're trying to do here is they say, hey, at least we tried, an hour heads up or whatever. But how can they look at that man to release him on the streets, knowing the crimes that have been committed, knowing that risk? How can they say, hey, we'll see you later, as he goes off and could potentially commit?
And you guys may think this is an extreme example, but it is. You can pretty much see a story like this daily, where there is someone who is a hardened criminal. I mean, daily in almost every sanctuary city, hardened criminal getting released almost immediately. I mean, this guy was in for a year. I think they wanted this example because it was documented he was hostile towards everyone he interacted with. But you can find local news stories almost daily of someone who is stealing, robbing, physically assaulting, raping, etc. And they will be processed for like 2 or 3 hours and then they get out. The guy who was actively burning down houses in California that was videotaped and many witnesses in and out, never got in trouble, never went to jail. It's just totally unbelievable. Opposite world.
Another crime down the line. I mean, is it worth it to instill trust with the immigrant community? How about, the citizens? And how about the harm that they could face due to the unknown of releasing a dangerous criminal alien to the streets?
They knew this guy had a propensity to be violent to law enforcement because he had done it in their very jail. And they can't give federal law enforcement a heads up. Sheriff Wagner, would you have given him a heads up?
I think in that circumstance, I would.
Yeah, you certainly would. But for people who do what you would do,
As he says that with his face down and looking all sad, it just this should not be a political thing. This is crazy. People are dying, lives are being ruined.
you're now getting sued for that, right? Your attorney general is coming after you.
Yeah, and as the gentleman over here said, we should stay out of local business, right? And so here I am with the state attorney coming down on me for trying to juggle the whole mess.
Because that's how law enforcement, you're supposed to work with other law enforcement when you can, not violating the Constitution, just be in good common sense way to make sure people are safe, law enforcement safe, public is safe, and frankly, as I said before, even the migrant is safer when you do it that way, when you do it the common sense way versus the sanctuary city way. And that's what we really have to, I think, that's really the decision here. Common sense or sanctuary city way.
And you guys, all these protesters, the people are so angry and don't know what they're angry about. This is why. But if you explain this to them, show this to them, they'll say it's lies. They'll say it's fake. They don't want to believe it. And Forbes has done a pretty good job of reporting on some of these. Like getting you like a 5-minute shot here of what is happening and what needs to be fixed. And the crazy thing is, not to go down the rabbit hole, I got a video a ways back you can see about Elizabeth Warren where she is just off the rails, like she's going to have a heart attack, just freaking out. And of course, she's just spewing lies and anger and misleading the American public. And I'm lucky I saw that video right away and reposted the information because that video got taken down. A lot of these videos, man, the left is actively trying to take this stuff down. They do not want people to know the truth. It is sad. It is scary. What do you guys think?